All right, let's dive into a story that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a legend. We're talking about a teenager, a huge dream of freedom, and how he captured this supposedly unconquerable fortress, an act that would literally change the course of history.
I mean, that's the real question here, right? How does a 16-year-old with basically no army, no cannons, just a small group of friends, manage to take over a fortress that was a massive symbol of an empire's power? It just sounds impossible. But, and this is the incredible part, it actually happened.
Okay, so to really get this story, you have to understand one simple rule from that time. Whoever controls the forts controls the land. Simple as that. See, forts weren't just big stone buildings. Oh no, they were the absolute key to power. They were symbols of who's in charge, they were the local government offices, and they were the backbone of all military control. So let's get to the person at the center of all this whole vision. It didn't just pop up out of thin air. It was forged, in the hills near Pune, inside the mind of a young man who was destined to become a legend, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. And his inspiration? It came from a really powerful place. His mother, Jijabai. She didn't just tell him bedtime stories from the Ramayana and Mahabharata. No. She was teaching him, instilling these deep lessons of courage, of what it means to be a leader. And all that shaped his one ultimate goal, Swarajya, self-rule. But there was a giant obstacle in his way. The land and all those forts we just talked about were controlled by the super-powerful Adil Shahi's Sultanate. So you've got this huge, almost impossible dream. Where do you even begin? Well, if you're Shivaji, you don't start small. No way. You go big. You decide to target one of the most imposing, most untouchable-looking fortresses in the whole region. And that fortress was Torna. Its other name was Prachanda God, which basically means the massive fort. The name alone tells you everything, doesn't it? Its reputation was a weapon in itself. We're talking steep cliffs, incredibly strong walls. The whole thing was designed to just crush the spirit of anyone who even thought about attacking it head-on. Just to give you a sense of scale, this thing towers at over 1,400 meters above sea level. Think about that. This wasn't just a castle. It was a literal mountain fortress. It just dominated the entire landscape, basically screaming, "Don't even try it," to any army that came near. It was a titan, both physically and psychologically. And the sheer audacity of this plan, it becomes crystal clear when you just look at the two sides. On one hand, you have the Adil Shahi Sultanate, a massive, sprawling empire with a professional army, cannons, the whole shebang. And on the other, a 16-year-old kid with some local influence and a small band of loyal followers. It is the definition of a David versus Goliath situation. Okay, so if you can't possibly win with brute force, what's left? You've got to outthink them. And this is where the story gets really interesting. It stops being about a military fight and starts becoming a masterclass in pure strategy. So instead of trying to scale these impossible walls, Shivaji did something completely different. He opened up a secret channel of communication. He actually started negotiating directly with the fort's commander. He used this brilliant mix of political persuasion, maybe leaning a bit on his father's reputation, and he exploited one crucial weakness. The Sultanate wasn't paying that much attention to this faraway fort. It was an overlooked piece on the chessboard. And the result? It was absolutely stunning. The fort was captured without a single drop of blood being shed, a totally bloodless victory. Now, this wasn't just a win. It was a psychological earthquake. The news sent tremors all across the region. Think about it. A teenager had just outsmarted an entire empire. So the victory was complete. But the story, it doesn't end there. In fact, what happened next, inside the walls of Torna, turned out to be just as important as taking the fort itself. This is what turned a clever strategic win into the financial bedrock of a future kingdom. Imagine this. While his men are securing the fort, just making sure everything's in order, they stumble upon something incredible. A hidden treasure. A huge stash of gold and wealth just sitting there, left behind and forgotten by the old rulers. And right here, this is the moment that separates a simple conqueror from a true visionary. Did he keep the gold for himself? Nope. He immediately reinvested every single bit of it. He used it to strengthen Torna's defenses, to start building a brand new capital fort called Rajghat, and to attract more loyal warriors to his cause. He literally turned found money into the building blocks of his dream of Swarajya. You see, taking Torna wasn't just a one-off victory.
It was the blueprint. It was the proof of concept. It showed that this new way of thinking, this new kind of warfare, actually worked. And it was a strategy he was going to use again and again to build his entire empire of forts.
And that really captures the core lesson from Torna, doesn't it? It became the guiding philosophy for his entire military career. The idea that intelligence, strategy, and the element of surprise, those were his real weapons, and they were way more powerful than any cannon the other side had.
And this whole philosophy eventually got a name, Ganami Kava. It's basically the Maratha art of guerrilla warfare, a doctrine that was really born from this very first victory, all about using the terrain, using speed, and using your brain to beat much bigger, stronger enemies. You could say Torna was its first successful field test. And get this, from that one single fort, a massive network of over 300 fortresses would eventually grow. This incredible web of strongholds became the very skeleton of the Maratha Empire. It's what made it so resilient, so hard to attack, and so incredibly powerful.
And it's so important to remember that these forts were so much more than just military bases. Think of them as mini cities. They were the local government offices, they were the banks storing treasure and grain, they were the communication hubs, and of course, they were the ultimate symbols of control. They were like the vital organs of the state. Every single one was essential for the empire to function. And really, it all comes back to that one fort. Every single one of those 300-plus fortresses stands on the foundation that was laid by that first audacious and completely bloodless victory at Torna. It truly was the first stone laid for Swarajya. It was the single act that proved to everyone that this impossible dream was actually possible.
So what does a single act of courage like that, born from a dream of freedom, really represent? Well, it represents the start of a revolution. It's proof that a powerful vision and a clever strategy can be way more effective than just brute strength. And it shows us that sometimes that very first stone, when it's laid with enough courage, is all you need to begin building an empire.